Does Antarctica truly hold the world's deepest secrets? Are the legendary remnants of the Atlantis civilization hidden beneath its ancient layers of ice? Why has this continent become a place so strictly regulated and nearly impossible to access? Is the greatest mystery of UFOs connected to this frozen land? What about Admiral Richard Byrd's extraordinary claims that made history? What did he truly witness, and why have these accounts been kept away from the pages of history? If you're ready to seek answers to these questions and embark on a journey rooted solely in facts, let's uncover the mysteries together. Antarctica is the planet's most harsh, desolate, and least explored continent. Throughout history, this frozen desert has been home to countless myths, legends, and mysteries, claiming the lives of many who attempted to uncover its secrets. The existence of Antarctica is no longer a mystery as it once was. It awaits those who wish to explore its depths beneath the planet's surface. However, permission to explore it is denied. In fact, you're not even allowed to wave your hand and go there. But why? Why are countries trying to keep this ice-covered continent hidden like a secret treasure? Or is there something else behind all of this? A truth that only a select few groups want to keep from everyone else. Today, we will embark on a journey to the frozen southern part of our world, delving into the stories told about Antarctica and uncovering the truths behind them. By the end of this journey, many of your questions will find answers, while new ones will emerge. Welcome to Mystic Apps. In the 2nd century AD, an exceptionally important Greek scholar emerges, Claudius Ptolemaeus. You might have heard him referred to as Ptolemy or Batlamyus. He is recognized as an astronomer, mathematician, geographer, astrologer, and philosopher, a truly extraordinary figure. Ptolemaeus spent a significant portion of his life at the renowned Library of Alexandria, the ancient world's center of knowledge, sifting through parchments and leaving us a wealth of information across various fields. However, regarding today's video, he put forth another intriguing claim. He is the first person in history to speak of a massive landmass in the southern part of the world. In his work titled Geography, he refers to this landmass as Terra Australis Incognita, meaning unknown southern lands. How could this man make such an assumption? At a time when knowledge about the world's continents was extremely limited and the existence of anyone beyond the oceans, especially near the South Pole, was unknown. How could he describe it? Surely you're wondering how Ptolemaeus could speak of something so obscure. In reality, Ptolemaeus' extraordinary claim was based solely on science. Of course, it was the science of nearly 2,000 years ago, but it was still science. Ptolemaeus adopted Aristotle's theories, who lived about 400 years before him, regarding the Earth's roundness and the necessity of significant masses at both the northern and southern ends to maintain its balance. Kudos to Aristotle for making such a brilliant inference without knowing the vacuum of space and that the planet actually hovers in a kind of void rather than resting on a surface. Approximately 200 years after Aristotle, scholars like Eratosthenes and Hipparchus accurately calculated the Earth's size and circumference using fundamental physics and mathematics, despite their limited resources. Hence, even after such a long time, making flat Earth claims, like those Ptolemaeus did, is utterly contrary to science and logic. Ptolemaeus argued that based on the knowledge from these scientists, the majority of the Earth's landmass was in the north, implying the necessity of a massive landmass in the south. He termed this his balance theory. Additionally, during that era in Greece, there was a prevalent belief that a vast landmass surrounded all the world's seas. Consequently, seas were considered to be internal seas within this massive landmass, necessitating a colossal landmass beyond the great oceans. Thus, even if no one had discovered it, many European cartographers adopted this as a fundamental template in their ancient world maps. Today, individuals who believe that the world is flat and that there is a giant wall at the poles, take this ancient Greek error and market it as truth on platforms like TikTok. This is the reason for our reaction to such claims. Most people's reality has been transformed into unfounded claims presented in 20-second TikTok videos. Please be cautious of these claims and conduct your own research in every way possible, especially by using artificial intelligence. Ptolemaios' idea of these mysterious, unknown southern lands transformed into a myth and a goal over the centuries, with European sailors racing to be the first to discover them. Thanks to nearly 1,300 years of advancing maritime techniques, the age of discovery begins, and skilled sailors set sail into the boundless seas to explore uncharted territories, producing maps that began to present our planet in detail. Maps showing the coastlines of North America, maps showing Asia, and progressively larger maps that included all of these. It seemed like the world's mysteries were being solved. Until in 1511, Piri Reis, the great Ottoman navigator, shook the world with his famous and mysterious map that depicted Antarctica before it was covered with ice. During the years when the Ottoman Empire, also known as Devlet-i Aliye, was at the peak of its power, one of the most critical figures in the Navy, Piri Reis, completed his work titled Kitab-ı Bahriye. This work is extremely valuable for maritime purposes as it contains highly detailed maps for its time, along with navigation information, port details, geographical data, and information on natural phenomena. In 1513, while conducting research for his book, Piri Reis presented another significant map to the reigning Sultan, Yavuz Sultan Selim. This map is exceptionally comprehensive, even containing information about the American continents. You know this map today as the famous Piri Reis map. However, the section you see is actually just a small fragment of a much larger map. This small section highlights the part of the African continent facing the Atlantic Ocean, along with the eastern shores of North and South America, which were extremely valuable for its time. But at the bottom of the map, we can see another intriguing landmass. Today, we know that this is Antarctica. How could Piri Reis have drawn this mysterious continent that, at the time, was nothing more than a myth? Moreover, how could he depict it without the ice sheets that have supposedly been there for millions of years? It seems impossible, doesn't it? There must have been information coming from the astral realm, or drawings left by an ancient advanced civilization, as some of you might suggest. Perhaps the famous Ottoman navigator somehow accessed this information. It's understandable because such claims have been circulating for years to add mystery to the subject. However, the truth is much simpler. When Piri Reis created his map, he did not receive information from aliens, lost civilizations, or beings from the astral realm. As he explicitly mentions in his book, he merely compiled information from previous sailors. So, how did this man draw Antarctica? Those who say that no one had discovered it at the time are mistaken on one point. Who told you that this area is Antarctica? Was it internet forums, mysterious videos, or astral realm experts? In reality, the region corresponds to the southernmost part of South America, representing Patagonia and Tierra del Fuego. Since the continent wasn't fully explored at that time, Piri Reis made a cartographic error by extending the unexplored parts of the region downward on his map. During that period, the exact shape of the southern tip of the continent wasn't fully discovered. This was a common cartographic mistake that appeared in several places during that era. As we corrected the map with modern computer modeling, we now know how closely his drawing aligns with the eastern coast of South America. Therefore, the mystery you think exists in Piri Reis's map isn't actually present. Moreover, he himself mentioned the sources he used while drawing the map, and among them were no aliens. Even though the map doesn't have a mysterious aspect, I believe it was an extremely important resource for its time. We might not have found the mystery we were looking for in Piri Reis's map, However, the Oronteus Finaeus map published in 1531 complicates things a bit, because once again, it depicts a southern continent resembling Antarctica without being covered in ice. Moreover, it places this landmass beneath both Africa and South America. Oronteus Finaeus, a French mathematician, astronomer, and cartographer, stated that while preparing his map titled Complete World Description in 1531, he utilized notes and drawings from Ptolemaios, Christophe Colomb, and Amerigo Vespucci, which were mentioned at the beginning of the video. Now, we had explained that since the time of the Greeks, there has been a myth about a mysterious landmass in the south. Therefore, you frequently see a continent at the southern tip in such old world maps. Even if no one had discovered it, many European cartographers adopted this as a fundamental template. We might think that this map is no different. However, there's an interesting point here. The shape of the continent in Finaeus's map genuinely resembles Antarctica's appearance after the ice-free state was mapped with high technology in the 1990s. This remains a topic of debate. Researchers claim that Finaeus actually drew the continent of Australia, which is highly unlikely, because European explorers only discovered Australia nearly 100 years after Finaeus. With this possibility eliminated, we are left with two options. Either Finaeus took the long-established myth of the lost southern continent and drew a continent from his imagination, coincidentally resembling today's ice-free Antarctica, or Finaeus, although it sounds impossible, somehow truly drew Antarctica's state before it was covered with ice. This possibility would have been seriously considered by an academician living nearly 500 years after Finaeus, and would have led them to claim that they discovered Atlantis, an advanced utopia described in the notes of the famous philosopher Plato thousands of years ago. Charles Hutchins Hapgood is an academic who studied history at Harvard University and later became a history professor. Although he was a history professor, Hapgood had two other great passions: ancient maps and geology. He spent years unraveling the mystery of the lost southern continent that appears in hundreds of years-old maps, scanning hundreds of pieces of information from ancient Greek myths to Oronteus Finaeus's map to develop an interesting theory. According to Hapgood, the global cartographic techniques used in these ancient maps were far ahead of their time. Additionally, the coastlines of the continents, especially what he believed to be Antarctica, were drawn exceptionally well. Combining this and various other data with historical myths, Hapgood claims that an advanced civilization that existed before the Ice Age left some technologies to humanity. Yes, the pre-flood civilization theory you know. According to Hapgood, this civilization possessed advanced maritime technologies and targeted the mysterious southern lands pointed out by Oronteus Finaeus and the Greeks. However, there was one difference. According to Hapgood, the frozen continent known today as Antarctica was not there back then. It was located in a much more temperate and habitable area in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean and housed a highly advanced civilization. This civilization had reached the American continents, Europe, and Africa with their advanced maritime skills, sharing ancient knowledge with other humans. After the events known as Younger Dryas, which occurred around 12,000 years ago, this giant continent migrated to the southern tip of today's world and became covered in ice. Plate tectonics? Other academics looked at Hapgood's claim with skepticism, dismissing it as nonsense. How could massive continents move? Scientifically, this seemed impossible and was dismissed as absurd. However, what they didn't know was that continents are continuously moving. This claim actually does not originate from Hapgood. Alfred Wegener first proposed the theory of continental drift in 1912. However, at that time, the scientific community rejected this idea as nonsense. Later, in the 1950s, with the ocean floor mapping project, fissures on the ocean floor were discovered over a span of 10 years. In 1968, Robert Parker and Dan Mackenzie formulated the plate tectonics theory. In the 1970s, GPS technology proved that continents indeed move very slowly. This is why science is ever-changing, not fixed, and progresses through open-minded individuals, not through dinosaur-like academics who cannot think outside the box. Look, in 1912, Wegener's colleagues personally mocked him, but by the 1970s, the phenomenon was proven. Therefore, if someone talks about highly scientific things, they should always approach it with the possibility of reality. Try to scientifically disprove or confirm that idea. Don't dismiss it as absurd just because it sounds far-fetched or lacks evidence at the moment. In the future, you might see it become a scientific law. Nothing is certain. Being open-minded in both science and philosophy propels humanity forward. Let's not forget that. However, there is a significant difference between plate tectonics and Hapgood's claim. Continents move very slightly each year. Therefore, we only start to see changes in the continental shapes of the world after millions of years. According to Hapgood, the giant continent of Antarctica is almost the size of North America and suddenly shifted to the Antarctic Circle. This is a truly boundary-pushing claim. Hapgood supports this claim by stating, below the Earth's outermost layer, the lithosphere, which is where we live, there is a molten layer called the asthenosphere, approximately 200 to 400 kilometers deep, and plate tectonics movements occur thanks to this layer. However, Hapgood makes the following claim. Whatever happened 12,000 years ago, which was an unimaginably large event, caused the entire lithosphere layer of the Earth to shift at an extremely high speed, giving the Earth its current state. The devastating destruction caused by this shift entered history as a flood. You can also see that this claim appears later in Chen Thomas's book, Adam and Eve. It's indeed a wild claim and almost impossible scientifically with our current geological knowledge. Especially, we say almost because theoretically, something that could actually happen is, for example, a rogue planet passing close to our solar system could cause dramatic changes in our planet's axis due to gravitational effects. During this time, massive fractures in the crust could cause such a shift. Another possibility is that the Earth passed through a high-energy nebula, or gamma-ray burst, causing high-energy particles to heat the planet's core and layers, resulting in the asthenosphere becoming more fluid and the crust layer shifting like a stone above an iceberg according to its center of gravity. These are truly extreme scenarios, and in such situations, who knows what remains of the planet? Therefore, Hapgood's theory has generally not been taken seriously, but our knowledge in geology is still very limited. Hence, like the old scientists, it might be too early to dismiss these as nonsense, and an unknown catastrophe might have occurred. Hapgood's proposed idea was later linked to the lost continent Atlantis. The idea that there could be traces of ancient civilizations beneath Antarctica's approximately 5-kilometer ice cover suddenly started to gain a place in popular culture. In fact, Hapgood wasn't the only one fueling this idea, because we know that the Nazis conducted various expeditions to the South Pole region before World War II. As a result, in 1946 and 1947, the American Army planned and executed the largest Antarctic discovery in history. The famous Admiral Richard Byrd led the mysterious Operation High Jump. This operation also led to the creation of all the Antarctic myths you know today. After thousands of years of myths, the idea of the southern mysterious lost lands was finally proven by the Russian Imperial Navy in 1820, and the continent of Antarctica was officially discovered by humans. From that day on, countries lined up to explore the region with the most extreme climatic conditions in the world. The first comprehensive expedition was conducted by Admiral Byrd between 1928 and 1930. An exploration and military base called Little America 1 was established in the Ross Ice Shelf region of the continent. In the following years, Byrd organized several more expeditions to the region. However, those who investigated the mysterious continent were not only Americans. The Nazis also organized expeditions to the region in 1938 and 1939. Although many stories claim that the Nazis were also searching for Atlantis, their actual aim was the natural resources of the region. The Nazis, preparing for war, needed large quantities of whale oil and various raw materials, and they planned to obtain these from this desolate continent. However, with the outbreak of World War II, this supply line was cut off before it even began. The only real information that adds mystery to these events is that in the final years of the war, when the Nazis realized the war was coming to an end, they allegedly retreated to their bases in Antarctica with various military technologies, and according to some, even Hitler himself escaped from Germany to these bases, then moved on to Argentina and Chile. This, of course, is not a claim with solid evidence. However, there are quite serious sources regarding some high-ranking German officers fleeing to South America, changing their identities, and living there. Therefore, we cannot entirely dismiss this theory as a lie. Who knows? Maybe they indeed hid some technologies under the ice. But whether it's because of these secret Nazi technologies, Atlantis myths, or completely unrelated reasons, immediately after the war, America sent a large fleet of 4,000 soldiers and scientists to explore Antarctica, and the most comprehensive experiments the region has seen began. The information provided to the press was essentially about testing cold weather technologies, studying the region's climatic and geological structure, and conducting various scientific research. However, according to some, the operation has a more secret aspect, making contact with advanced civilization beings living under kilometers of thick ice. In the stories told, it's described that Admiral Byrd entered one of these large underground holes during his exploration flight, was greeted and conversed with an advanced civilization there, and after sharing information, he was left again. Moreover, during this chaos, clashes with these beings on the surface even occurred. Why is it forbidden to go there instead of exploring it? Why can't planes fly over it? What is being hidden there? In addition to all these questions, as photographs of interesting formations on Antarctica began circulating all over the internet through satellite technology, these questions have become more frequent. In fact, it is beneficial to approach the matter with a clear mind first. Otherwise, you will get lost in paranoia and conspiracy theories. Let's start one by one. One of the biggest reasons for the international interest in Antarctica that began after America's research was actually the efforts of states to seize the regions and truly extremely rich resources there. Let me give a simple example. While Russia's known oil reserves are 80 billion barrels, only 50 billion barrels of oil are believed to be in the Ross Sea region of Antarctica. Other coasts and inland areas are not taken into account. In the period of massive industrialization after the World War, an attack on this area could have triggered a new war between countries and, of course, could have destroyed natural life. Therefore, the Antarctic Treaty was signed to decide that countries would not be able to use the region's natural resources and would not conduct military studies on it. The other articles of the treaty state that the region will be used for scientific studies with the approval of member countries, and that all data found will be shared among member countries. So this treaty is indeed a good agreement. Now, if only America and its allies had signed the treaty, we would say there is a mystery here. But even at that time, countries that were against each other had signed it. Moreover, this number has increased even more today. Therefore, it seems more logical that the aim is not to hide a mystery there, but to seize resources and prevent possible conflicts. So, what to say about Admiral Byrd's Operation High Jump operation, alien contact, and even conflict events? In these matters, people who claim that Admiral Byrd's journals contain such information are actually people who have written various books and made programs to earn money during the Antarctic craze period. Normally, such information is not in the Admiral's journals. Listen to his own narration in the TV program he appeared in.
They're interested. It's by far the most valuable, important place left in the world for science. That's where the scientific groups all over the nation are really interested. But more important than that, it has to do with the future of the nation, because it happens to be an untouched reservoir of natural resources.
The author's claims are entirely made up. Admiral's family and friends have also explained that the journals the authors claim to have seized do not actually exist. Moreover, the authors have never shown anyone the journals they claim to have seized. The reason why flights are forbidden over the continent is that the weather conditions in the region are extremely dangerous, the magnetic pole damages electronic devices, and there are no suitable runways to land in emergencies. Antarctica is almost as large as North America. Additionally, a ban has been developed to prevent other countries from secretly flying over the continent and doing some business. Therefore, control is not only in America, but also in member countries, and these data are monitored there. The claim that civilians are not allowed in Antarctica is not entirely accurate. Today, 56 countries included in the agreement can conduct research there with permission. If you want to go as a citizen, there are expensive Antarctica tours available, and you can even reach some coasts. However, going towards the center is forbidden. If you think it's about minus 80 degrees in winter and about minus 20 degrees in summer, you understand why. In such an atmosphere, a single mistake can lead to absolute death. Speaking of the mysterious formations seen in satellite photos, another image you often see on the internet is a purported UFO stuck and dragged on the ground. Although this claim has become popular, it is understood that the image is a rock that is rolled down a mountain slope without being cropped. What about pyramid shapes? This could have been really interesting, of course, if it weren't Antarctica. Normally, it's hard to see sharp edges in nature. Wind and water erosion soften the edges, except for ice erosion. Glacial erosion works like a razor, making even the hardest rocks have sharp edges. For this reason, you can see the sharp edges of mountains in various parts of the world that were once glaciated. Also, this image is actually the peak of Ellsworth Mountain that hasn't been covered by snow. So, there is a large mountain underneath. What about mysterious tunnel entrances? This is true. Yes, there are dozens of photoshopped fake images, but there are also large cave entrances on the continent that open in summer and close in winter. However, immediately calling them alien landing ramps is, of course, wrong. They could be natural ice caves. It would be wrong to comment before going. In short, almost everything you hear about Antarctica is not real. They are clickbait traps prepared to get your clicks and are just trash information. In America, this is an industry. People earn significant money by writing such books, appearing on programs, and so on. Therefore, when you appear on a program and tell stories like, there are aliens in Antarctica, Nazis went there and met them, America fought them, and then it was forbidden to go there, because there's a giant wall, you are mixing all the fake information circulating and presenting it to people. As long as you research it. However, one thing that truly continues to intrigue on the planet, could there really be traces of a civilization under 3 to 5 kilometers of ice? This is the only debatable point. Like Hapgood's theory, whether continents actually drifted during the extraordinary event of the flood period 12,000 years ago. Yes, it's a wild claim, but it's intriguing. And at that moment, could Atlantis, known as an island country, have migrated and frozen into the southern polar region? Today, science states that the continent has been covered by ice for millions of years, and that's impossible. And it really shows us that Antarctica was near the equator in the last period, when continents were close to each other 200 million years ago. But were there beings on the planet 200 million years ago? We don't know that. Maybe there was a civilization that truly existed and disappeared over time. Normally, no trace would remain of any civilization over such a long time. Nature cleanses everything. But the continent has been in a frozen state for millions of years, so some things might have been preserved under the ice. We can discover this only if the ice of this vast area melts one day. Otherwise, drilling through 3 to 5 kilometers of ice and conducting research at -80 degrees would be a really tough challenge, especially in an area as large as 16.6 million square kilometers. These are the known facts about Antarctica. Even without aliens or Nazis being involved, the continent is indeed a highly mysterious region, especially scientifically. It seems that as long as the ice remains there, the mystery of the continent will continue to be preserved, and this will last for quite a long time. But who knows, maybe one day we can discover something under this vast area as the ice thins due to global warming. However, most of the information circulating now is trash. Information prepared to get your clicks. Believing that states are sharing everything honestly with us would be naive. However, just because we do not trust the governments does not mean that highly advanced aliens exist in a frozen desert. The information circulating on the internet regarding this is usually easily debunked claims. And remember, the continent is monitored not only by America, but by dozens of countries. So no one can act on their own. There, we think that rival countries would immediately expose this. If you have done research on the continent and have some tangible information that we haven't covered today, please write in the comments and let's discuss. After all, we're talking about a truly 98% unexplored, mysterious, frozen land. Who knows? Maybe we can catch something from one end. Thank you all for watching the video.